Department of Justice's report pulled back the veil on a particularly rotten Miami Police Department, a department that regularly uses an excess of force. The use of excess force by police against the very citizens they are sworn to protect is by no means limited to Miami. In an amazing new book titled Rise of the Warrior Cop, Radley Balko argues the paramilitarization of police departments across the country is leading to a police force that increasingly sees itself at war with the American people. And joining me now is the author of Rise of the Warrior Cop, Radley Balko, who's also a senior writer for the Huffington Post. Great to have you here. It's a fantastic book. It's really remarkable reporting. I really suggest folks check it out. What did you make of this report from the DOJ on Miami? How atypical? Where is this department on the spectrum?
Well, it's interesting. You said it was reminiscent of the of LAPD in the 90s. It's actually reminiscent of the Miami Police Department in the 90s, as well as the early 2000s. This is not the first DOJ investigation in Miami. In 2003, there were several officers who were indicted for planting guns at shootings, for wiping fingerprints off of guns at shootings. 1996, a squad of Miami cops shot Richard Brown, who was also unarmed, 123 times, while his daughter hid in the bathroom. This is sort of a part of the theme in the book, is that you can have rogue officers, you can have bad police officers, but if you keep getting bad police officers over and over and over again, at some point you have to start looking at policy, and you have to start looking at incentives and try to understand why you're producing this.
What about the system is doing it?
Exactly.
So what is broadly the argument of the Rise of the Warrior Cop? What's new? What has risen? What do we have now that we didn't have before?
Well, I think there are two things going on. One is you have the rise of SWAT teams, which has been dramatic over the last 30 years. We've seen about a 1,500% increase in the use of SWAT teams since the early 1980s.
1,500%.
That's right. So there were about 3,000 SWAT raids per year in the early 80s. By 2005, there were about 50,000 SWAT raids per year. And the vast majority of those are, for consensual drug crimes. But what I also argue in the book, though, is that there's this militarization. It's a mindset, right? And it's not just the SWAT teams. It bleeds over into the patrol officers who are, also told every day that they're fighting a war and are also sort of dressed like soldiers and encouraged to take on a soldier's mentality. And this is, the military and the police have two very different functions, and it's pretty dangerous to conflate them. But I think that's what we've started to do, or that's what we have done.
I want to play this clip. This got a lot of attention back in 2010. This is video of a SWAT raid in Columbia, Missouri. Yeah. And you don't often see footage of this kind of thing. Take a look.
Need one. I need one. Slow it down. Just a minute. Get past me. Move past him. Move past him. Come on, guys. You're fine. Somebody turn around. Stay around. Don't move. You understand? Put your hands behind your back. Do it now.
Now, in that raid, police believe the suspect, Jonathan Whitworth, was a major distributor of marijuana. They found just very small amounts for recreational use. How atypical is that kind of scene?
Well, that's the thing about this video is, there was outrage when this was posted on the internet.
Those dogs were killed, by the way.
One was killed. They intended to kill one. They accidentally shot the other one. So, there's stray bullets going around. There's a little boy in the house. But the thing about it, that raid is typical. These are not rogue cops. This is policy. This is what happens 100 to 150 times a day in this country. In fact, the only thing that's really unusual about this raid is the fact that it was video recorded and released and made it onto the internet.
So, I am a police officer who has to put my life on the line.
Sure.
And there's a call about a suspect in a house. Do you want them to just go in unarmed? There's a reason, right, that they're coming at these doors with the kind of force and the kind of tactics and the kind of intensity they are, which is that they are at risk when they're serving these warrants.
Look, I'm not opposed to SWAT teams. I mean, I think there are situations where it's appropriate, but those are situations like hostage takings or bank robberies or an escaped fugitive, where you're using violence to diffuse an already violent situation. The vast majority of the raids, including one we just watched, the police are creating violence, right? They're creating confrontation. They're creating volatility. I mean, these people are suspected of nonviolent consensual crimes, and you're bringing violence to their door. And that's really where the problem is.
I want you to walk us through a little bit of how this started, the role that Richard Nixon plays in the rise of the warrior cop, the role that post 9/11 plays, and the amount of money that is going into local police departments. One of the most eye-opening parts of your book, right after we take this break.
Sure.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive. As far as the new money is concerned, incidentally, I have made it clear to the leaders that if this is not enough, if more can be used, if Dr. Jaffe, after studying this problem, finds that we can use more, more will be provided.
And of course, it's Richard Nixon officially launching the U.S. war on drugs in 1971. I'm here with Radley Balko. We're talking about his new book, Rise of the Warrior Cop, the Militarization of America's Police Forces. What role does the war of drugs have on this trend that you identify?
It's been fueling it. I mean, without the war on drugs, I don't think we would have the proliferation of SWAT teams and the general militarization that we do.
A lot of these SWAT teams are going after drugs. It's drug raids largely they're doing. What I think one of the things I found so fascinating in your book is just the amount of money that is being spent on vehicles and armor and all these kind of toys, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
It reminds me of a consistent theme in American politics, which is that once you label something security, it's no longer counts as spending.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to. We have to tighten our belts. But if something's security, I love this portion of your book. This is, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. That's Sheriff Leon Lott of Richland County, South Carolina, quoting Matthew 5:9 in a press release announcing his acquisition of a track-propelled armored personnel carrier with a belt-fed rotating machine gun turret capable of firing 50 caliber rounds of ammunition. Yeah. There are police departments across the country in really small localities that have massive firepower. Where's the money come from?
Well, there are several different sources. For about 25 years now, the Pentagon has been giving surplus military equipment over to these police departments across the country. Wow. Literally millions of pieces of equipment have been transferred this way, and we're talking, tanks, helicopters, armored personnel carriers. My favorite, bayonets, for some reason. Police departments seem to love the bayonets. So you've got that. Then you've got the federal anti-drug grants, and these are grants that the federal government gives to these police departments solely for drug policing. So if your SWAT team goes out and arrests a suspected murderer, there's no federal money attached to that.
Oh, wow.
They go out and arrest a suspected pot dealer, you get a lot of money coming from the federal government for that.
So you're creating an incentive system to do these raids because the raids create the possibility of acquiring the money to buy the equipment. Your
SWAT team can then become a revenue enhancer rather than an expensive sort of toy that you have on the side. And then since September 11th, now we have DHS writing grants to police departments across the country to buy yet more equipment in the name of fighting the war on terror. And, they're going to places like Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So one of the things we saw during the aftermath of the Boston bombing was this total lockdown in Boston. And we saw, I think we have a little bit of video of what that looked like in terms of the amount of firepower that was brought to bear. I mean, we just saw huge police, military, quasi-military vehicles rolling through the streets, people in tactical gear. And my thinking at the time was, well, I'm glad they have all this stuff because this is terrifying, and there's these terrorists who are on the loose who have pulled off this bombing. And when you look at that, I mean, that is the justification for this. What's your response to that? Well, I mean, how did they find Tsarnaev? A guy went out, saw something suspicious in his backyard, called the police. They responded with a SWAT team. I mean, it was not the sort of saturation patrols were not what actually found him. And again, I'm not opposed to SWAT teams. Bringing a SWAT team out to apprehend him in that situation is perfectly legitimate. It's the routine use and the kind of growth of their use. Radley Balko, author of The Rise of the Warrior Cop, the Militarization